Salut! Students often ask me how they're supposed to understand spoken French, because it sounds nothing like the French we learn in class. I mean, it's true. While we learn, for example, that I don't know is je ne sais pas, if you're not used to it, you might wonder what I say when I say je sais pas. Last week, we saw some basic principles like removing the word ne in negations. So today, I wanted to give you more tips and examples to practice hearing these shortcuts that a lot of French speakers use. Before we start, remember to download the notes to see more examples written down and follow along. Also, we're so close to 1,000 subscribers on this channel. I'd really appreciate it if you could check under this video if you're subscribed or not. YouTube recently changed the color of the button, so it might be red, gray, white, or black. But what's important is if the button below the video says subscribe or subscribed. If it says subscribed with a D in the end, thank you, merci. If it says subscribe without a D, please consider clicking on it to help us reach our goal for the year. Every subscriber counts, just like every like adds up to having the video pushed to more people. So don't forget that if you do like this video, you can click on the thumb up. Anyway, with this out of the way, let's proceed to our pronunciation tips. The first one is the subject pronoun je. Even though we learned that the subject pronoun je only shortens to J apostrophe in front of a verb starting with a vowel, the truth is that most Parisians like me do it in front of everything. Now, I don't want you to start writing it this way. Today we learn about oral pronunciation, but that does not change the fact that we need to write correctly. The reason we learn French the correct way first is that knowing how to spell actually helps you figure out how to pronounce everything. So today, when you see in the card something written in red, it means that you should never write it this way. It's only a cue for you to know how to pronounce a particular example. So, going back to our subject pronoun je. Yes, we shorten it to a J apostrophe in front of everything. This is why a sentence like je mange is most often pronounced by Parisians like me, je mange. Now, it gets a bit tricky in front of verbs starting with an S. Take the example, I know how to speak French, which in French is je sais parler français. Now, that E sound in je used to create a break between the sh and the s. But if we remove it, what do you think happens? Well, sh and s are now linked and make the sound sh. This is why you will hear people say je sais parler français instead of je sais parler français. And remember, we learned last week that the ne part in a negation is almost always removed when we speak. Well, here again is our example from the beginning of the video. I don't know, which is je ne sais pas. What's happening there, and it's a good example of why you need to know how to write first, is that when we remove the word ne in the negation, we now end up with je and sais next to each other. Now we just learned that je and sais merge into che. Now you can understand why je ne sais pas becomes je sais pas. It's because in the absence of the negation part ne, je and sais are now next to each other, and the sound j and s becomes sh. Alright, now let's skip to our subject pronoun tu. This one is pretty simple, but I'm going to emphasize again that you should only learn this orally and not spell it this way. The subject pronoun tu will be pronounced as a T apostrophe, but only in front of verbs starting with a vowel. You might see it written this way online or in comic books, but it's never proper. So let's speak like Parisians, but let's keep our spelling proper and clean. So here is an example. Let's use the verb avoir, to have, and use one of our expressions we have already learned to practice. Avoir envie de, which means to have envy of. Therefore, we translate it by to want. Let's imagine someone is talking your ear off and you want to say, hey, you want to talk today, huh? You would say, hey, t'as envie de parler aujourd'hui? See here, tu as became ta. Even though we shouldn't write it this way, this is how we say it. Now, you also probably noticed that our preposition de became the apostrophe. This is why I said t'as envie de parler and not t'as envie de parler. We saw this last week, so I invite you to go back to lesson 10 if you forgot about that one. Now, there is one more subject pronoun we need to focus on for pronunciation purposes. Actually, it's 4, but it's all the il and elle, singular and plural. This one is a bit tricky because it's entirely dependent on how fast someone speaks. But I'm going to try to show you what may happen here. First, when we use the subject pronoun il and elle, singular, he and she, the L sound will very often disappear in front of verbs starting with a consonant. This is why he speaks French and she speaks French, while written il parle français and elle parle français will usually be pronounced in a fast-paced conversation, il parle français and elle parle français. For elle, the L sound is a little more present, but that depends on how fast you speak. Now, I said this only happened in front of words starting with a consonant. The reason is quite logical. In front of words with a vowel, the L is actually there to liaise between the two. This is why he loves to eat and she loves to eat. Il aime manger and elle aime manger are still pronounced il aime manger, elle aime manger. Now, for the plural il and elle, because we have that S in the end now, they will liaise with all verbs starting with a vowel using the Z sound instead of that L. This is why the rule I just explained will apply to all the words regardless of consonants or vowels. This is why they speak French will be written il parle français, but just like the singular, it will be pronounced il parle français. And they speak French as a group of women will be elles parlent français, but just like the singular again, it will be pronounced elles parlent français. Now, with a verb starting with a vowel, the L sound will also disappear, but since we have an S, we need to make the liaison with our first vowel as a Z sound. This is why they love to eat, which is ils aiment manger, is actually pronounced ils aiment manger. And they love to eat as a group of women is elles aiment manger, but it's pronounced elles aiment manger. Okay, another one you probably already know is that instead of nous for the subject pronoun we usually use on while speaking. This is just something you need to practice hearing. This is why you will most often hear on mange instead of nous mangeons. There's not much more to say about this one. Maybe you just try to practice the subject pronoun on every time we learn a verb. For example, we have, on a. We speak, on parle. We are, on est. Okay, now while we're on the subject of words being shortened, let's remind ourselves of our demonstrative adjectives. Remember? This book is ce livre. This window is cette fenêtre. These books is ces livres. And these windows is ces fenêtres. Well, the singular ones have a strange pronunciation when speaking. The masculine se, ce, will very often be pronounced as a single s sound. This is why ce livre will often be pronounced slivre. This one is very common, so be on the lookout for it. I even checked the president's speech today, and I saw that it does use it as well. So that's how common it is. Now, for the masculine CETTE, C-E-T, in front of masculine words starting with a vowel, and the feminine CETTE, C-E-T-T-E, a lot of people may pronounce a single st. That's a little less common with the feminine, but it happens a lot. First, you'll hear it most often for the seasons or the masculine words starting with a vowel. For example, cet hiver will be pronounced stiver, and cet été will be pronounced stété. For masculine using CETTE, C-E-T, you may hear it, for example, with words like this hotel, cet hôtel, being pronounced stotel. The thing is that while by itself it may sound strange, stotel, in a longer sentence it flows quite nicely. For example, I spend the night in this hotel would be je passe la nuit dans cet hôtel, but we'll pronounce it je passe la nuit dans cet hôtel. Now, I did mention that we also do that for the feminine. Okay, well, this one is borderline slang, and you might even have people correcting you if you use it. But the truth is, a lot of people do it. So I'll give an example while cautioning you maybe not to use it. If we say this story as cette histoire, you may hear cette histoire. For example, what's happening in this story is qu'est-ce qu'il se passe dans cette histoire? But we would probably say qu'est-ce qui se passe dans cette histoire? Also, remember our example for this window, cette fenêtre? Well, remember also that the mute sound E in the middle of a word will usually disappear when we speak. This is why the word fenêtre is pronounced fenêtre. Now, what's coming up is borderline slang, as I said, but you may hear for cette fenêtre, cette fenêtre. Don't spend too much time on the st for cette, feminine, though, but just try to keep it in mind in case you ever hear it. Alright, going back to our crazy sentence, qu'est-ce qui se passe dans cette histoire? Or what's happening in this story? This one had all the shortcuts, so it may sound crazy, but it's a perfect segue to how we pronounce est-ce que and qu'est-ce que in questions. Here it's pretty simple. All we do is apply the previous rule I mentioned about the word se, ce. Se becomes the single s sound. This is why est-ce que is pronounced est-ce que, and qu'est-ce que becomes qu'est-ce que. So to say what is it, qu'est-ce que c'est, we say qu'est-ce que c'est. Alright, one final pointer, and then I will read a practice sentence the proper way and then the very fast way, so you can practice hearing while reading. It has to do with how we say please. The correct way to say please using tu is s'il te plaît. Now, what happens when we speak is that you'll often hear s'il te plaît. Here, the il completely disappears. But when you think about it, you remember our subject pronoun il often becomes a single e sound. Now here, between our sound s and t, which flow very nicely together, we pushed it a step further and removed that vowel e sound. Some people still say s'il te plaît, with a bit of e sound in there. But the faster you go, the more that e sound will disappear. This is why we end up saying s'il te plaît. Now, for the vous way of saying please, s'il vous plaît, you will usually hear s'il vous plaît, using the simple removal of the L in il we saw earlier. Rarely, but it happens, you'll hear people saying s'il vous plaît. Now, I have my own theory about this and I might be wrong. But you know how sometimes people start speaking differently depending on who they're speaking with? I do believe that we are so conditioned in French to adopt a more well-behaved manner when we're in a context where we need to use the vous pronoun that we unconsciously start speaking a little better. Now, this is only based on my personal experience of growing up for almost 3 decades in Paris, So I might be wrong, but I do believe that when we use vous, we do speak a little more properly. And maybe even slower. This is why I think we may say s'il te plaît more naturally than s'il vous plaît. And that you'll almost always hear s'il vous plaît. If you disagree, or if you have any question, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think or what you've heard. Alright, now let's put an example text on the screen. I will first read it the proper way, and then I will read it the fast way. Now, keep in mind that short of using slang, this is quite the extreme in terms of pace and eating of syllables. Most people will be in the middle and pronounce a little more while still eating most of these syllables. Please replay that second part as many times as you want while reading the regular text and then the text in red, which goes over what I actually pronounce. This is actually an exercise I usually recommend. Find a show on Netflix that exists in English and in French. First, watch an episode in English to know the plot. Then, watch it in French with English subtitles so you can hear the French but still follow along the plot. Then finally, watch it in French with French subtitles. Hopefully, you'll find one with good subtitles. Honestly, if you have a recommendation for that, please post it in the comments below to help us all. Alright, here we go. This strange example is what you would say if you were busy but someone tried to talk your ear off as if you weren't doing anything. Now let's try to keep a light tone. This is supposed to be fun, not aggressive. It means, hey, you really want to talk today? I don't know what you ate, but there are not enough minutes in an hour for me to listen to you all day. Can you please stop? Alright, here it is first with every single syllable pronounced. Hey, tu as envie de parler aujourd'hui. Je ne sais pas ce que tu as mangé, mais il n'y a pas assez de minutes dans une heure pour que je t'écoute toute la journée. S'il te plaît, tu peux arrêter? Now, here is what I would actually say. Hey, t'as envie de parler aujourd'hui? Je sais pas ce que t'as mangé, mais il n'y a pas assez de minutes dans une heure pour que je t'écoute toute la journée. S'il te plaît, tu peux arrêter? Alright, I'll let you replay that to figure out all the parts that I ate. But now, with my belly full of vowels from all these words, I'll see you on the next one. Au revoir. Oh, that was a bad joke.